Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm a little late. I kind of do that on purpose. Fashionably late, let people finish their 7 p.m. programs. I'm going to check on the web, make sure things are working here, see how we're looking. So one of the reasons I have the connectivity concerns is I have a big house, I have a couple of roommates, and so roommates might come in, they know I'm doing this, but might not know where in the house I'm doing it. But anyway, so at different times, people are using different amounts of internet at the house. It's hard to predict. I was trying to go do it somewhere else, which worked in the past, but didn't work, so now I'm elsewhere in the house, lots of white walls, so that's good. But anyway, my name is Zach Howard. Welcome to Trending Topics. So last week, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. I was having trouble with all of these things, but the connection with Sam Ronan, we were doing a one-on-one. In general, I wanted to have people as guests on this show, and I will eventually down the road, but for now, I'm just going to stick to a format with just me. It gives me a little bit more time to kind of build a routine, build a kind of show. Turns out there's plenty of stuff to talk about, so I don't need to bring other people on right away. So it'll be just me on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, where I'm in Seattle, 10 p.m. out on the East Coast. So thanks for joining me from wherever you are. Hopefully, I think that I set it up correctly so that I will be horizontal the whole time. So the show that I'm working on for Real Progressives is called Trending Topics. And so basically, the premise of the show is what's trending, what's not, and what should be. So we'll basically kind of talk about a bunch of things. Some of you may know me from Real Progressives or from Twitter, and as I'm still getting new, I'll still introduce myself a little bit. But I have basically been blasting on Twitter for the past year or two, just kind of calling out media and calling out Twitter and calling out the entire corporate-controlled media environment in all of the ways it comes to us and all of the misinformation, bias that we see, trying to help correct the record for real, because they took that term from us. But that kind of became a thing on Twitter, was policing facts and information and, calling people out who are bullshitting us, because it happens far too often. And so this show is going to be talking about trending topics, basically what's going on in the country and the world, what's getting coverage, what's not, as kind of part of our media revolution and figuring out new ways to get new sources of information that we can rely on, because the information that we're getting, as we saw through the election cycle in 2016, we saw just so many sources that were unreliable, bias, opinion, just like talking heads, just saying crazy things, and it's out of control. So the point of this Trending Topic show is going to be to try and address what's being covered, talk about what's not, talk about the things that are and if they're being covered accurately or not, and always feel free to join, chat, all these things. There are 2 dogs running around, and Hank likes me a lot, so he usually comes over. We have a little golden lab now. He's little, and he likes me a lot. He's so sweet. Anyway, so last week we kind of missed the Vault 7 conversation. That was something that I was going to talk about before Sam came on. But just to kind of touch base on that, basically this kind of open and shut case, the WikiLeaks released basically Vault 7 was what they called it. They released this massive dump of documents that are related to CIA spying and all the absolutely massive CIA network that has been basically in place, spying, incorporating microphones and other tracking devices into people's personal cell phones, into Samsung devices, things like that, to be able to bug rooms. It was really a massive spill of information, and of course, it's one of the ways, like, how do I know if something is real or not? You go to check CNN. If CNN's not talking about it, if all of the mainstream sites are not talking about it, that means it is something that's bad for the ruling class and bad for the rich people. So when the WikiLeaks dump was coming out, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, let's see what CNN's writing about it, and it's just radio silence, and that's how you know, okay, this must be real in general. But anyway, so there was a lot of spin that was done to kind of minimize what this absolutely just bombshell. It's weird because this isn't, besides the fact that the media doesn't want people to be talking about it because it shows how corrupt and like just abusive to our privacy rights the CIA has been, and tons of problems. And I'm not even going to get into that topic in terms of what the leak was this week. Maybe I'll do a special program about it at some point. But I just want to bring this up because basically it was really they tried to sweep it under the rug very quickly. Most of mainstream media didn't cover it at all. A lot of the alternative sites did. And you know, that's kind of one of the reasons I got a lot of people on Twitter last year is I was kind of posting a lot of the Podesta emails as that was getting leaked, and the CIA, all of these documents that have been leaking, there's just so many. It's not really bombshells because it's like, we know it's been happening. It's like as soon as these smart devices came out, it's like, okay, well, I'm sure that the CIA is watching us in this live stream tonight because I'm one of their favorite people. But, you know, we kind of assumed that there was going to be some kind of capacity to, you know, take content or information from people's cell phones or computers, things like that. Of course, we found out that the CIA has not only been just going ham with collecting information, but also have made, basically worked with a lot of different organizations, or in some ways allowed kind of bugs in software that gave those, that gave them at some point an opportunity to use that as a spying device, things like that. But basically, this was vulnerable software applications and software systems that the CIA was using, and it made it able so that anyone who could hack into the CIA could take advantage of the hacking network and hacking tools that the CIA was creating. So it's, you know, it's weird because it's something that I think a lot of people were really just kind of like in the back of their mind feared and knew that the CIA was kind of doing behind our backs and to protect us. I don't know, it's all questionable, right? But it really confirmed a lot of that suspicion, and it's really uncomfortable to think about it, and what's going to be happening from here forward. It's bad. But learn about it, read about it, look into it, try and start acclimating yourself to that information and some of the facts that came out about that, and watch the major players. So Google, Microsoft, Apple, those are the three big ones, and there's one more. I don't remember what the other big company was, but anyway, watch those companies and their relationships, because obviously those companies are massive and they have a lot of commingling with the governments and all these different aspects of their businesses. And so we should be watching what these major companies are doing. Samsung, all the companies that were affected in the Vault 7 leaks, we should be watching what they're doing and trying to figure out how they're moving forward from this and what that means for our personal cell phones, our personal devices, our internet, all the things that we use that we would want to be you know, just to make sure that you're using protected personal devices just for your own privacy. So let's see here. So that was on. Oh, so I wanted to bring that up because it's basically already been brushed under the rug. It's been a week, and nobody's talking about it anymore. There's all these other things happening. Weird. All these other storms coming up in the media that are still kind of keeping us away from talking about what all of these incriminating documents were that exposed the CIA. Now, this is, of course, the same CIA that right now is basically trying to undo Donald Trump. We've got a lot of kind of the deep state. Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah. Hey everybody. Thanks for saying hi. And by the way, tell me where you're from if you're watching. Tell me what city you're in, because that's curious to me, and I want to hear more about where people are from, and if things that are going on in places that multiple people are, we should definitely talk about them. I can't really chat with you guys like real time, but I definitely can read the comments, so make comments and things. So, diversions, yeah, exactly. So there's been a lot in the media that's been popping up ever since the Vault 7 leaks, and it's like, oh, that's obviously no coincidence. The media is obviously these just paid corporate entities that are entertainment sources for us, and despite the fact that the football game or the TV show that you're watching is supposed to be the entertainment, I mean, they really consider basically everything that gets put on TV, whether it's news, commercials, like TV, it's all programming that's trying to get you to watch more TV, buy more TVs, follow these programs, and basically none of them are, you know, acting in the interest of your economic well-being or your political well-being. So don't really think that the sources of information that are coming at us through these corporate media entities are putting together content that is going to keep you informed. On that note, an exciting thing for me and just for the internet and for the progressive movement and for a lot of the progressive community in Real Progressives, Jordan Chariton's website, Truth Against the Machine, launched recently, and some of you may have seen on my feed. I'm a contributor there now also. I've written some pieces there, and I know Steve and some of the guys at Real Progressives are going to, we're going to start putting some of my stuff on Real Progressives. Also, the written stuff that I do, I'm mostly writing for Truth Against the Machine, I think. I can write faster than I can do, like, free video. But I will be there, so absolutely check out Truth Against the Machine. It's Jordan Sheridan from the Young Turks. He's got a batch of like 15 reporters. Everybody's on fire right now. It's amazing. I'm so proud of what everything that the Real Progressives is doing to build up their programming, and what Jordan and Truth Against the Machine are doing. And you know, it's like there's not that many that are really going independent and that are trying to build. And I absolutely encourage you to get to know these journalists at Real Progressives, get to know journalists at Truth Against the Machine, all independent journalists. Please go out of your way. I know you guys, I'm preaching to the choir, but go out of your way to find and support independent journalists right now. Good transition to part of the problem that I think that is like, oh my God, Zach, I need to step up my game. I need to get a better mic. I need to get a whole setup. I need to get all this stuff because I don't know if anyone's been watching the Hills Twitter feed or just in general over on Twitter lately, but Chelsea Clinton is all of a sudden everywhere. You may have seen this absolutely painful exchange between her and Chris Hayes, two of my like absolute least favorite human beings on God's creation. The dullest personalities that walk into any room they go in. I absolutely cannot stand either of them. But Chelsea Clinton and Chris Hayes went back and forth on spinach pancakes, which, if I'm talking about spinach pancakes real quick, it's just like, okay, most people who've seen my Instagram or seen my Twitter know that I'm a breakfast junkie, and I don't really take it seriously, but at the same time, I take breakfast very seriously. Why the fuck would you put spinach and pancakes? It really just doesn't make sense. It's just not okay. There's a million places for spinach, and if you do it once, fine, whatever. But if you're going to put something on Instagram or you're going to be talking about your breakfast, make it interesting. Literally, spinach pancakes is interesting to Chelsea Clinton. Literally, spinach pancakes are interesting to Chris Hayes. This is like the absence of personality that these dweebs have. It kills me. One of my favorite friends on Twitter put that they're personality black holes. You go anywhere near Chelsea Clinton or Chris Hayes and it literally just vacuums the life out of you. I really believe that that is what happens when you are affiliated with Chelsea Clinton or Chris Hayes. But I digress. This is part of this, all of a sudden, wow, Chelsea Clinton's all over the news. She's getting lifted in all these articles. So interesting. The Hill's mentioning that Chelsea Clinton made a comment about all this shit. It's like, okay, she's not running for anything. She's never been elected to anything. And actually, as I've been thinking about it, it's kind of impressive how much Chelsea Clinton has not done her entire life. She's not young. She could have done, literally, I think Sasha and Malia Obama individually have probably accomplished more in their lives than Chelsea Clinton has, and I'm not even trying to say that for exaggeration or hyperbole. Chelsea Clinton is worthless. She's done nothing. And she's our just perpetual reminder that the Clinton money is all still circulating in these media agencies, and Chelsea Clinton obviously has all this money in the world because God knows that the money didn't go to Haiti and the people that needed it down there. It went straight to Chelsea Clinton's wedding. You know, it's like these people are going to stay in the media because they have big bucks for these big public media strategies. So it's like, oh, Chelsea Clinton, obviously she's just sitting on millions of dollars. The Clinton Foundation has closed the doors, but they've still got some spending money, and hopefully they're not wasting it on Hillary because she has no more opportunities left. Please, please, please. But we can really see that that Chelsea Clinton is getting deliberately put into the media because of a deliberate public relations strategy, inserting her and putting her opinion in there and trying to make her seem edgy. Some of the quotes that they've had, and I've already talked about her too much for talking about something horrible. But anyway, this is a reason why you should support independent journalism. This is why I brought this up, was because really, 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 we are going to see this more and more often, and we're going to see it in situations where we don't realize it, right? We're going to see people that are getting lifted up by dark money and getting put in the spotlight and saying progressive things, and we just always have to keep checking and making sure that if they're running for elected office, what are their promises, who are they getting money from, and really just kind of vet all that stuff. It's weird because obviously folks need a paycheck, and you wouldn't want, we're fighting for people to have good wages. We don't want to say, oh, journalists shouldn't make their money, and good journalists are doing really, really, really important work, dangerous work, intense work, timely work. They're working around the clock. It's journalists deserve lots and lots and lots of respect, and they deserve compensation that's appropriate for the amount of risk that they're taking on. And unfortunately, the whole mainstream media is where all of, like, the most money is going to be for journalists. So you're going to see people that just need to make ends meet or want a good job, and they're going to be really good writers, really good journalists, but they're getting paid by these bigger companies. So support independent journalism, basically, and watch for the GoFundMes, and ask me questions too. Feel free to tweet me. People should get Twitter accounts. I mentioned that last time, but get Twitter accounts, be active on Twitter. And in terms of folks who are really plugged into the current event cycle and who are always kind of reading up on progressive issues, we need more of us in the spotlight, honestly, and we need more of us just getting out there, and not only just to kind of like counterbalance the amount of paid media and paid commentary that's coming from the 1%, but also, just to introduce ourselves to people over time, to build credibility, to talk about things, to digest what's going on, to parse things out. It's like, even if you're talking with small groups of people, it's just so helpful to vet ideas, and we always want to make sure that we are feeling comfortable. There's a million things coming at us every day, news stories, things coming constantly, and you always want to have a couple resources that you can be like, okay, I totally didn't understand what's going on. Can you explain that to me? Or like, this is my reaction, what was yours? There's really honestly not time to be like angry and yelling and arguing with people over periods of time. We need to just focus on all of the values that we have as progressives, as people that want to change the status quo toward something that's more friendly to working families and the 99%. And we need to be in circles and social circles and in media environments where there are other people like us that, kind of have the same values underlying that, and hopefully aren't getting paid to get clicks or anything. But we this is going to be a weird transition period now for the next 4 years. I mean, honestly, things are just going to really evolve, and the more good-hearted people that are out there being part of it, the better, and the more we have less to worry about if we know that there are good people like us out there in the media calling out bullshit when we see it, talking to reporters, introducing ourselves to reporters, talking to our local news, being like, so who have you added since the election? Like, who are you adding to your staff to balance out what wasn't working beforehand? There's really a lot you can do, and that's another thing that I like about Twitter, is you can really come at local journalists, and you can find people who are reporting on stuff in your area. For example, Seattle Times and The Stranger are the two big news in Seattle. And so those are the two entities that I'm really most often policing. And everyone in their area, wherever you are, look at your local news. Local news, in my opinion, is the best place to go when you're trying to vet a story to begin with, and you see like a fake news situation, you read something sketchy, like, I don't know if that's really legitimate. Place to go is local news. Look at your local news stations, seeing if they're reporting on it. If they're reporting on it, that probably means the more local the organization is that's running it, the less likely it is getting kind of paid in from the top down, so the less likely it's going to be influenced by corporations. So the more local the source you have, the better. If you can find local news reporting on an event, it's most likely happening. And local reporters are probably people in your communities, in your neighborhood, and so they may be more likely to visit you. The Stranger is fake news, yep. I mean, Seattle Times and The Stranger, maybe that'll be a project that I work on, is giving a grade to all of the media. Oh, this is a good idea. Thank you, Jordan. So something that we should do, we as progressives or someone in the independent media, should basically make a map of the United States, and we should put all of the major publications in that are based on cities. We can give them all grades, because on the one hand, Seattle Times, for example, and these are the types of things these are the questions to ask yourself about the media, the news in your area. So Seattle Times, famously, the only major newspaper that endorsed Bernie, which is amazing, and that op-ed that they wrote, the editorial board from the Seattle Times that endorsed Bernie Sanders, which is a very brave choice, in the Democratic environment, but it was amazing that they did that, and I was like, thank God I live here. It's a really good op-ed, though. They talk about a lot of the reasons that Bernie legitimately should have been the nominee and why would be president now. So Seattle Times wrote that op-ed, and so that gives you this sense that, oh, Seattle Times is super progressive in terms of what they're endorsing for the primary campaign. Now, at the same time, the publication is generally conservative. And so, for example, on the day that we saw this horrible pharma bill that Bernie introduced, basically a bunch of Democratic senators joined with Republican senators to shoot down this opportunity that Bernie had created that would lower drug costs. And we saw in that event, or I was watching that day, I was watching the Seattle Times to see what they were reporting on, because both our senators here, Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, who are both the most corporate, faux progressive people ever. It's terrible. You think Washington blue state. It's really independent folks out here. It's amazing. Our two senators are both basically like Hillary Clinton's part 2 and 3. They're like, oh, I say all the right things, I'm progressive, that gets things done, and then they vote for pharma. They're all backed by all these major companies out here, right? Because Seattle has all these rich companies that pour their money into the senators here. So on that day when this all happened, I was watching the Seattle Times and I was watching the Stranger's Twitter feed, and I was like, okay, what are they going to say about Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell voting in this decision that basically influenced, hurt the opportunity of people, young and old, all across the state of Washington, absolutely tons of Democrats that elected them, and not a single tweet from Seattle Times or from Stranger the entire day holding Patty Murray or Maria Cantwell to account. Now, I obviously took it upon myself to call everybody out, and it was interesting because I had them on blast all day, and as I do, and I got home and I was like, I am always looking at Twitter and seeing how many followers people have and how much engagement they're getting, because obviously there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of trolls and basically like paid followers. And so on you'll see tons of accounts that have like 500,000 followers, like people on TV like Chris Hayes, things like that. They'll have like 500,000 followers and then they'll be tweeting, and it's like, why do you only have like 3 people retweeting you if you have 500,000 followers? And it's like, I don't go through their list to see what the bots are, but it's like, Correct the Record and these organizations have millions of dollars. They've spent all this money on all of these Twitter trolls that basically, my hunch is that whenever they have something happen, like this past week with Rachel Maddow on the Trump taxes, they're like, oh, this happened, and then they send a little advisory out to all of their 10,000 Twitter trolls, and all of those people pile onto those tweets. So they're all bots, and it happens in real time, and it makes these people look like they're making popular statements, but they're really not. So I try to observe that type of thing as it's happening on Twitter in real time, and that's part of the things I'm calling out. And so when I was observing on that day, Seattle Times and The Stranger, neither of them tweeted at all about Maria Cantwell or Patty Murray and this horrible decision they made, and they should have commented about it, reported about it in one way or the other regardless. My last name is Haller, Haller. Haller, you can say Haller too, but it's actually pronounced Haller, Zach Haller. And I guess I can put my Twitter handle in there because I've got my computer right here. Yay. So the day that happened, I went back to Twitter at the end of the day, and I was looking at all of the tweets for Seattle Times and The Stranger, and now, as I was noticing that not a single one of them was about Patty Murray or Maria Cantwell, I was also noticing that they barely get any engagement on their tweets. And I'm like, that's weird. My shit's been blowing up all day. They've been getting like no engagement. And so, because I had nothing better to do than count retweets on Twitter when I'm bored, and, I was drinking, I was smoking, it's fine, I wasn't bored. But I basically went through all the tweets that day and counted out and tallied out how many tweets and how many engagements both Seattle Times and The Stranger got. And my Twitter feed got double the amount of engagement that the Seattle Times got. And The Stranger wasn't even close. But basically, Seattle Times has way more Twitter followers than me, but I was like, this is really weird because they may not even have more Twitter. I haven't brought up Keith Ellison yet, but don't even get me started. Maybe I will. Definitely type things if you want me to talk about them. I have a little bit of agenda, and we're going to go till 7:45 or my phone dies one way or the other. But definitely type if you have topics that you want me to touch on. But anyway, so basically the long story, still long, it's not short. It's over now though. But my Twitter already has more engagement than the major newspaper in the state of Washington. I literally get more attention on my Twitter than the Seattle Times gets on their Twitter. That is absolutely insane, and that is only the result of me being progressive on Twitter and all people like us going into Twitter and knowing how important it is to lift up people like us who are speaking the truth and supporting these voices and showing the corporate media that we're not even listening to them. So again, that's all the more reason to get more Twitter handles. Twitter is a lot more, it's better to engage on Twitter in general because it's a public record, and that's like, you know, on Facebook, if the Seattle Times has their community, it's really a closed community, only people that are liking it. They can make the posts public, yeah, but Twitter is a lot easier to be like integrated into like the public comment, and it's easier to have a tweet that you make lifted off Twitter and put into an article at the last minute. It's really nice. So go on Twitter and start, again, just like build your case, build your situation, repeat themes, like do your own thing on Twitter, because you will find out, and especially look at all your local, we are the media, we straight up, we are now, and especially as the whole disaster, this absolute shit show that's happening with Trump as president now, and how he tweets one thing and then everybody talks about it, and it's like, we're about to lose healthcare for 24 million people, and literally they're talking about microwaves still, and I'm like, literally, Kellyanne has it down to a science at this point. She's like, well, I'm just going to go say alternative fact today. Oh, I'm going to go say microwave today. And literally, they wash the entire media cycle, and so there's no actual attention on the fact that Trump is bombing. Drones are going down, or drone strikes are up 432% from Obama, and I admit that I thought that Trump was going to keep it the same amount of drone strikes as Obama, because I couldn't even imagine that someone would do more drones unconstitutionally than Obama. But sure enough, Trump is even worse, and that's something that people aren't talking about because Kellyanne made a microwave comment. So all the more reason, again, how low the engagement is of the media, all the more reason to be out there supporting independent journalists, putting your voices out there. And again, Twitter is a better place to do it because Facebook is where your friends don't necessarily have to agree with you. It's fine. You don't necessarily want to think about, oh, I want to get engagement on Facebook. You don't, if you are on Twitter, that's where if engagement is happening. It's because public people are looking at the tweets that you're putting up, and you're putting up stuff about related topics to what's going on. So it's a lot more, it's just much more welcoming to participate in conversation on Twitter than it is on Facebook. So that is my kind of overall rant, and I'm going to talk about a few things. So we have my 3 things I want to talk about: what's trending, what's not, and what should be. So what has been trending this week, and I'm going to pull up my Gmail because I had a little bit of a thing. There's obviously a lot that's been going on. And if anyone has stuff that they really want to talk about, put it in the comments real quick. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about, I didn't necessarily want to talk about that. So let me think. The Rachel Maddow situation I should address really quick, because a lot of this stuff I feel like is just media know-how and what to do and what not to do. So Rachel Maddow had the most embarrassing, I want her to embarrass herself as much as possible. She's an absolute clown. She's one of the absolute worst people in media, period, in my opinion at this point. I think that she's done a lot of harm and deceiving, a lot of harm and caused deception. But anyway, so Rachel Maddow the other day, and I'm going to mad cow, that's perfect. Literally, that's absolutely accurate. That's completely right. That's the same goodness level as Kellyanne Conjob. The first time I heard someone say Kellyanne Conjob, I'm like, okay, it's done. I'm never calling her Kellyanne Conway again. But anyway, so I don't even want to talk about Rachel Maddow too much because I don't even like hearing my voice say her name. It's just terrible. So she tweeted total ratings grab. She tweeted, oh, we've got Trump's taxes. So little thing about tax returns, if you didn't figure this out in the primary when people were calling for Trump's taxes, basically you can't release other people's taxes. There's a federal statute that prohibits it. Obviously, if you could just go publish people's taxes, everybody would be stealing other people's taxes and exposing people at all levels in private sphere, public sphere, all the time. The reason that doesn't happen is because it's illegal to do that for individuals, for journalists. And if a journalist were to steal public tax or person's private taxes, leak them to an organization, that organization to some extent could report on what they found, but they would be in violation of this federal statute if they were publishing any information, private tax information, without consent. So the important thing is that the person needs to give consent. So say, for example, I was like, oh yeah, I don't care, you guys can look at my taxes for 2015, I'll print them. as long as I have my consent, you can publish them, but very rarely does that ever happen. So as soon as Rachel Maddow posted this, I have Trump taxes on Twitter. Yes, seriously, it's like, okay, this can't be a legitimate story, and here it is. Not only is it going to be a completely legitimate story, she's caging it. They started a countdown clock. It was absolutely absurd. And she was caging it like this is going to be the biggest news. It's going to be a bombshell. They're trying to make these bombshells to distract from the actual bombshells, so they call their own little bombshells. And then she completely humiliated herself because, first of all, Trump released a small portion of his taxes that I think actually had leaked prior, so I think they were already even out. And so Trump released them, just this one small portion from 11 years ago, from a 1040 form. And so Trump released it. So it's like, oh, well, there you go, perfectly. Trump has given consent for her to report on this. And so, Rachel, and I didn't even watch the show, obviously. I was busy vomiting all over my house. And it was a complete nothing burger. And Rachel basically was like, oh, we have 2 or 3 lines about Trump paying actually a really substantial amount of taxes, not necessarily the right amount, not necessarily he did his taxes correctly. I personally was sitting there, I obviously knew that they wouldn't put anything incriminating to Hillary Clinton on, but I was like, I want to see Trump's taxes, I want to see his donations to the Clinton Foundation, I want to see how he has the same tax loophole address as Hillary Clinton, I want to see the Democrats that he gave to that year, because Trump was a Democrat back then. It's like people have such short memories on that. But anyway, so basically Rachel Maddow blew up this whole thing, and then it was absolutely nothing. And this is just the absolute just stupidity of the corporate media, that they don't have any concept of the consequences that there are to doing this type of build-up and then it being nothing. It's basically just the boy crying wolf. It's that situation. That is, the more often you do it and it's bullshit, as we have situations where it's legitimate, nobody will take them seriously. So Rachel Maddow's a complete idiot. I'm glad that she was lingering in humiliating disrepute for the entire night on Twitter. Everybody was dragging her. That was fantastic. She deserved it. And unfortunately, she is still on the air, still a millionaire. If someone can fact check her net worth and put that in there, I mean, she obviously needs to just sell whatever the commercials are for her shows. She's probably selling, God knows what. God knows who's ultimately paying her and how much money she needs to make them, but she'll say and do whatever. And that's the type of thing that we can't buy into, and I'm glad that she was totally humiliated by that. But that's another example of things that are taking attention away from WikiLeaks and taking attention away from healthcare. And we need to be watching, and we need to be calling our reps and talking about healthcare, because obviously very serious concern that we are going to lose health care for many, 24 million people, I think it is. So watch on that, and that has been getting a decent amount of media coverage. Whether the media coverage is effective or not in terms of addressing the causes of the problem and holding to account. This is the thing. We can see media talking about how the Republican insurance plan, or RIP for short, because God knows that that's completely legitimate, and that's hilarious, I'm just calling it RIP forever. But, we obviously know that this is kind of the Republicans' intentions, but just because a New York Times or a mainstream, maybe left-leaning corporate Democrat publication is writing about it, doesn't mean they're actually going to be holding the people that they need to be holding to account. They'll be probably addressing the Republicans, if it's New York Times or something like that, Washington Post. They're not going to be calling out the corporate Democrats, the Cory Bookers, the Elizabeth Warrens, the people that are progressive. So as we follow the healthcare situation, be contacting your local representatives on every level, be contacting your media where you are locally, making sure they're addressing the local representatives that have a say in this. And that's where you should be drilling down your time. Obviously, it's great on Twitter to be kind of in the national thing where we're addressing our congresspeople and senators, and that's basically the only way we can. I mean, obviously, you can write to them, you can call them, you can build relationships, which you should. Twitter's a good way to find people nationally and address them, but it's more impactful if you're working within your local community, and it's more impactful for you as a person with clout from where you live and why your personal story matters to your representative. Even if they're still not listening, they should be more if it's your representative. And real quick on the immigration situation. So I have been working in immigration for 10 years, and I am trying to figure out the best way for me to start writing on immigration issues. The hardest thing about immigration in the media right now is that, first of all, Obama's immigration and everything was absolutely terrible. And folks like me who have been involved in immigration work for a long time were really struggling through the Obama years, especially the second term, to get people to pay attention to what was going on. And they weren't really. Now more people are paying attention to what's going on, which is good, but it's kind of just this like blank rage, and it's not really kind of digging into the surface of what the problem is, and if the problem was occurring before this administration or the problem was occurring after it. So it's really hard to even kind of start parsing stuff out, because a lot of the stuff that's going on right now, it's still Obama policy, and new Trump stuff is coming in, but the Trump stuff that's coming in often gets undone right away. So like something will go, Trump will put this travel ban, and I want to talk about the word ban also, but Trump will announce something, and then a few days later it'll get struck down in court, whether or not even there are ramifications of what he announced, the executive orders, right? Obviously these are brand new. Trump is figuring out all the kind of Trump style things that he can do to make fast changes. And because of that, obviously a lot of the stuff that he's doing, since he doesn't know anything about the Constitution, he probably hasn't read one page of it, right? Like, ridiculous. He's going to make all these mistakes, and he's just going to do his, like, bull in a china shop situation that he always does, just break as much shit as he can, and the courts will catch up and fix what he couldn't have done. So we're going to see that a lot, and it's going to be really hard to report on immigration. But the thing that it's just really stressful for me, and it is in general, but really when you're reading immigration stuff, really just try to look for bias, because again, this is a very kind of like heart-tugging issue that the corporate media loves to like put the sob stories out, and there are plenty of sob stories across the board in terms of like who's, in a bad situation because of all of the problems with immigration in our country and the world. It's very easy to find terrible stories and to use those to try and like push a particular political agenda. In general, America's immigration policy is bad. It's not bad because it's Republicans. It's not bad because it's Democrats. It's bad because it's really old, it's outdated, and no one has made any good advancements, and no party is responsible necessarily one more or the other. I mean, it's just so old at this point that I don't know that you could necessarily put blame on one party or the other for the place the immigration system is now. So maybe immigration more than other issues is important to not even look at it from a Republican or Democratic standpoint, because there's so much work that needs to get done on immigration. You should really just look at what you want to be advocating for, what piece of immigration policy you want to be advocating for, and thinking about it, in terms of what representatives you need to contact or what activism you need to participate in to make that happen. Because there's not going to be right or wrong people in immigration in terms of Democrats or Republicans, and the thing is there's basically no people who even understand the immigration system in the United States. It's just such a specialized field. There's so few people that really understand it. I've very, very, very rarely ever even heard a politician, congressperson, talk about immigration in a way where I'm like, oh, I see that as someone who's worked in immigration for 10 years, I see that they know what they're talking about. No one understands. Bernie, honestly, is one of the only people that's ever been able to speak with a clear understanding of all of the different components of the immigration and system. And his article, his comprehensive immigration reform plan, is absolutely outstanding. That is actually, if I were to think about it, that's where everyone should go, is go read Bernie's plan on immigration, look at that, and every issue that you see in the media, press it back to Bernie's immigration plan and look at it and compare it to that, because basically everything that everyone's talking about could be funneled through Bernie's immigration plans, because they're that good. There was a glowing write-up for him on immigration policy from the New York Times, which was well deserved. And it's just really, really, really rare for someone to have just a complete grasp of the entire immigration system, and not only have a grasp of it, but know how to fix it and know how to do that in a progressive way that benefits the people. Obviously, even we have problems with people who know a lot about immigration, but they have corporate interests behind them. So yes, Bernie should have won. It's so sad. people should have, or there's going to be people who know a lot about corporate immigration because there are a lot of big businesses that need visas for high tech. A lot of engineers, these tech companies, they'll know a lot about immigration, but again, you're like, okay, well, these are the people that it's basically Silicon Valley. And so obviously, this is a complete different special interest group. It's not a group that knows a lot about immigration. So go to Bernie's page, read about his immigration policy, and really let that sink in. And as you familiarize yourself with some of the issues, you'll start to see in the media how things really get twisted around, and how you're like, this isn't even talking about policy. There's, in terms of a ban, for example, so the United States obviously has very complicated diplomatic relationships, and we have basically one-on-one relationships with every country in the world, and that's been going on since our country existed. And our country is unique in terms of it's like a all-welcoming, all immigrants friendly, theoretically, country. So our immigration system is totally different than every other country's to begin with, and it's very, very, very complicated in terms of how many countries we have relationships with, and not only just those broader relationships, but the Department of State is the entity that works with other countries, right? Diplomats, consulates, embassies, things like that. That's Department of State is kind of the gatekeeper. So the Department of State is going to kind of see, you're going to see where people are getting visas issued to them, and that's one piece of foreign policy is who are we giving visas to. Some countries we give visas to very generously. Some countries are very expensive. Every single country basically has its own unique situation. Looking at who the Department of State issues visas to is one thing. There's no way to like ban a country. This ban term is just like the wall term where it's like we've got fence or no fence or things like that. They use this term wall as basically it's a marketing tool. It's a marketing tool for this idea of fear that says, oh, if we just say a wall, they'll remember wall, and that makes sense. And whether or not we actually build a wall, this is what we're trying to do. The ban, the Muslim ban, same thing. It's way more nebulous because obviously this is like political and on paperwork with countries and things like that. But there's ways that the U.S. government can say we don't want to admit people from certain countries, and they can do that in a way, however way they want. Whether or not they announce that, probably not. Whether how they're deciding on what those countries are, it's super, super complicated, and that's just the Department of State, and that's just visas getting issued to people so they can come into the United States. Then there's Customs and Border Patrol, which is the people that receive people when they come in, so people at the airport or people at the border. That's a different group of people, and that's going to be more of like the police type people where we'll see the police brutality issues, we'll see the bullying, we'll see things happen to people because of a ban or because of a law that's not necessarily the way things are supposed to go, but you'll see abuse of these positions at Customs and Border Patrol at the airport and at the border where you won't have any idea if you won't have any idea. It's just like these police shootings, just like these skirmishes where it's like you have, by the time you hear about it, it's like, okay, we have no idea what happened, and that usually obviously benefits the government employee. So those are the things that we should be watching there is for, and I mean that's basically the biggest thing that we need to be watching in immigration is the way that they're going to turn the detention system in the United States, which is already horrible under Obama. They're going to turn the immigration detention situation into the private prison industry, and it's horrifying, and like I literally have like sickness in my stomach thinking about it because it's basically like Guantanamo as its own big industry. Obviously they wanted Guantanamo, and the hidden prison in Chicago, obviously our corrupt justice system wants these off the radar prisons where they can do the most effed up shit ever. And with immigrants it's even worse because they don't necessarily have American citizenship, and so they don't have American constitutional rights. Our Constitution, which many people don't know, enshrines rights in humans. They're just people have rights in our Constitution, and that's different from citizens, and that's the way that the founders addressed the issue of immigrants in the Constitution was saying people in the United States versus citizens of the United States. So those are two things. Now, you think that people in these prisons that are bringing people in are going to be understanding the difference between a constitutional right for an American citizen and a constitutional right for a foreign national? It's not going to happen. And so it's just like, it's so scary to me to think about all the things that can start happening as they start building these private detention facilities. And I think that that's going to be kind of a lot of what goes on down by the border, by the wall. is this industry growing? And that's where we need to really be watching to make sure that there's scrutiny for the way that these laws are being enforced, what laws are being enforced, all these things, what laws are Barack's, what are Trump's, what are the same. So immigration-wise, the Department of State does visa issuance elsewhere. Customs and Border Patrol is what we have at the border and at the airports. Department of Labor is involved with issuing work visas to businesses that have needs. The Department of Justice is involved in terms of deportation proceedings and anything that's immigration related that requires a judge. There's a huge backlog in terms of court dates right now, so when folks are in a deportation proceeding or another type of removal proceeding, there's a lot of Border Patrol agents and there's going to be more, but there's not very many immigration judges. And so there's actually a really, really, really long line of people to get deported, because basically what happens, and this is just the short, really kind of layperson's version of the deportation process, but when a person gets scheduled for a deportation, they basically, that is an immigration process. It's a very expensive process, but immigration is, deportation is a process. So if you get signed, if they schedule you for an order of removal or whatever type of deportation proceeding is going on based on the case, in many cases that person gets scheduled for their court hearing to make sure they need to get deported, it's so backed up that they won't get to see a judge until like 2020. And so they'll get in the mail, it says, oh, your court date is 2020, and since you need to stay here until your court date in 2020, they actually give you a work permit as part of that process. So people who are getting deported get legal opportunity to work. And so it kind of defeats the purpose of putting a person in deportation proceedings, especially because Trump doesn't have, and Barack had a really hard time staffing immigration judges to keep up with demand for the people that are trying to deport. And so because of that, I don't think Trump is going to want to put people in the deportation process. I think he's going to want to put people in these prisons that are going to be built, and that's a huge, scary concern. And so anyway, I kind of started on the wall topic, but I wanted to talk, or wall and ban. I wanted to just kind of touch on how those are just very broad terms, and don't think of them, well, wall is much more direct than a ban, but immigration's policy is very complicated. Go to Bernie's plan, look at it, understand it, and you'll realize how much of a broad term wall and ban are, and it'll help you learn to parse things out when news stations or any writers just say a ban. If they say a ban, it's fear mongering. They're probably just trying to scare you, because it's not really technically, from an immigration standpoint, if someone's like, oh, we want to ban people, it'd be like, what exactly do you mean? Do you want to look at a certain group of do you want to look at a particular nationality because you think that something is in jeopardy with our relationship with that country? It's way more convoluted than just saying ban Muslims. It's crazy. That's just the very Trumpish way of marketing a very extreme and bigoted and racist immigration policy is basically what that is. So what's trending, we talked about that. What's not, we kind of talked about those two. I kind of wrapped it all up in that whole discussion, but it was good. I got on most of the things that I want to talk about. The last thing I'll talk up is I just want to plug this article that I wrote really quick. It's called The Democratic Purity Test. So I knew there's obviously been a lot of conversation in the kind of news cycle about these Democrats that are worried about purity tests. I do so many air quotes, you guys. I need something else. Lots of Democrats. Excuse me. I got a really bad cold after live streaming the women's rally outside last week, and I'm like, it's totally worth it for the activism, but I've been coughing since that event. I digress. So there's been a lot of people, Democrats, that are really getting concerned about elections coming up, and progressive challengers are coming in, and Democrats are worried that people are going to, now that we don't have a president to vote for the next 4 years, that progressives are, and people are going to inform themselves and learn about corporate Democrats and find out all these bad things about them, which there are a lot of. And so Democrats are saying, oh, we don't want purity tests. Progressives, you can't have purity tests. And I'm like, I'm definitely the last person the Democratic Party wants to hear from on a purity test, but that means I'm going to write one. So I wrote a purity test for the Democratic Party, the Progressive Purity Test, and the fine folks over at Truth Against the Machine published it, and that was a huge honor. I'm like the most proud of that out of anything that I've done, so I'm really happy about that. And it's pretty hard-hitting, and I hope you read it and share it and think about it. And I took a different approach, not a platform approach, because obviously when we deal with local races, platforms are a lot different. And we don't want to be we don't really want to be fighting over platform issues right now, in my opinion. We want to be fighting to overturn Citizens United, get money out of politics, and basically drain the real swamp, get all the people who are tied to corporate money, like Keith Ellison, out. Obviously, Keith Ellison is a good example of someone kind of in the middle ground who's taken a lot of corporate money, but also is a progressive talker. We have someone like Tom Perez who can't even say a progressive thing if he had the cue card in front of him. He's so corporate Democrat that he's never even won a freaking election, ridiculous. But I mean, as an elected official, I meant he obviously won the election by the DNC lobbyists that vote, the DNC party people. But anyway, so the purity test is basically just, do you reconcile the truth that the Democratic Party rigged the primary? Do you understand that the most important priority for all Americans, regardless of party, is getting money out of politics? And do you understand that the way that we are going to change the world, which we are, whether the president likes it or not, is through movements and social change around issues and not around candidates? Obviously, people who are us on the ground know that you support movements because then they outlast and outlive candidates and campaigns. Obviously, corporate Democrats just like fundraising, and that's why they do what they do. They don't know anything about grassroots organizing. They don't know actually anything about doing anything to change the status quo. Their job literally is to preserve the status quo, and they're doing a really good job so far. But we need to make it clear to them that that's not going to fly going forward. So read this purity test, let me know what you think, and hopefully you like it, and hopefully it will help you addressing some corporate Democrats as we see people kind of taking moderate stances and trying to continue with this Hillary Clinton model of moderate is better. It's just so absurd. And remember that the word progressive means to change the status quo. And so when people try to say they're progressive because they mean liberal and they are socially liberal, remember that progressive means not regressive, not regressing to worse status quo. Basically, the Trump-Clinton election was fighting over, is the status quo good or not? Whether Trump could improve the status quo or not, that was to be determined. But to me, that's what most elections are, is just two parties. Is the party in office, is that working or not? That's, to me, the simplified version of any election. And so as you think about politicians and if they're progressive or not, ask them what they're doing to change the status quo, because for 99% of people, the status quo is fucking terrible. And that's so many people. And so we need to remind ourselves that that's how many of us are out there. We need to address changing the status quo. We do that by addressing issues that are important to us. The most powerful way that we do that is working locally with people like us who are directly affected by it, addressing our local representatives. And if those local representatives are compromised by corporate interests, we as local constituents are the most powerful people to be able to address the corporate interests that are giving that money in the first place. So we can attack from both sides, and we should. And I hope that article will help you. So I'm going to sign off, and my phone didn't die, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I didn't even have a drink the entire time. I'm going to do that now. But I will be here with you next Thursday again. Give me your feedback. Share this video. Stay tuned to Real Progress. There's a lot of really good programming coming up. Definitely let us know what you like, and participate and share, and join us on Twitter. Help out. If you can donate to the Real Progressives, the independent journalists that are with us. And my name is Zach Haller, and I am often on Twitter. I'm on Facebook a little bit, but I hope you learned something, and I hope you maybe laughed once or twice. And I hope the thumbnail for this image doesn't make me look terrible, but you never know these days. But anyway, have a good night, everybody. Have a great weekend, and I will be tweeting as usual, so you know where to find me. Take it easy.